Hello everyone, welcome to my contribution to the Cyber Back to School Days. My name is Thijs Lecomte and I'm going to be talking about setting up Microsoft Sentinel in 45 minutes. This is going to be a demo heavy session where I'm just going to dive into the portal and show you how to do it and some tips and tricks on what to watch out for if you're first setting up Microsoft Sentinel. But first I'll provide you a brief introduction through slides. So we can position what Microsoft Sentinel is and why you would need it for. So first of all, my name is Thijs Lecomte. I'm a Belgian guy, security MVP, currently working for the Collective Consulting as head of the managed services. As part of that role, I am heavily involved in our security operations center, meaning day in and day out, I'm using Microsoft security tooling. One of them is Microsoft Sentinel. You can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn, and also on my blog 365 by Thijs. So first of all, why would you care about Microsoft Sentinel? Well, it's important to say that Microsoft Sentinel is a SIEM source system. So a SIEM system means that all the logs, you collect them centrally, and they are all stored in a central location where you can query them and create incidents based on, for example, an anomaly. The SOAR part is security orchestration, automation, and response, meaning that we can look into automation based on those incidents. So the SIEM will be responsible for collecting all of the logs, centralizing them, and then creating an incident, while the source system means that we can respond to it within Microsoft Sentinel, both manually and automatically. And SIEM and SOAR can be two separate products, but Microsoft Sentinel is both of them. We'll dive into it a little bit later if it's good at both of them, because that's another question, but it does do both of them. So it's really important because it means you can receive, for example, notifications when high-risk events happen. And it's different from Microsoft Defender XDR, because Microsoft XDR, yes, it will centralize all of the incidents on the Microsoft security stack, but it cannot integrate third-party products like AWS or your firewalls, which Microsoft Sentinel can do. So first of all, a small introduction on what Sentinel is and what capabilities we have. So first of all, it's important to note, let me turn on the laser, that it is built on top of Log Analytics. Log Analytics as an Azure resource, it is already existing, and it is a way to centralize all of the logs, but it doesn't have to be security related. It could be application logging, troubleshooting logging from an infrastructure perspective. So it's meant for all kinds of purposes. Log Analytics is the resource, and then you can enable solutions on top of Log Analytics. One of those solutions is Security Insights, which is the old name of Microsoft Sentinel. So this means that Log Analytics is the basis of Sentinel, and we enable the solution on top of them to enable security capabilities that we can use for our SIEM. Of course, the first step for to do something with a SIEM is to collect data. So that is something we do. We call it data collection. It is a process where we look into what logs we want to connect them into the SIEM so that we can have them in a central location. And then, of course, we do detection and investigation, and there's a couple of steps there. Of course, we need to discuss how much time we want to store and retain the data. By default, it is 30 days. Sentinel provides 90 days for free, so it's a no-brainer to go to 90 days. But you can go as long as 10 years if you would really like to. Based on that storage, we can do multiple things. One is we can do alert rules, so we can create alert rules which will create alerts for us to investigate. We can also create workbooks, which means it's a visualization of data. We'll discuss this later on. And it also boasts some AI and machine learning capabilities. Now, right off the bat, while Microsoft is saying in their marketing, oh, yes, we have AI and machine learning built in, that doesn't mean that you can just enable Microsoft Sentinel and use that to build your SOC. As Microsoft Sentinel as takes a lot of effort to manage well and to have well under control, to build the right automations, detection rules, etc. So it's not like machine learning or AI will do it all. You really have to put in the work. So it is a heavy investment to do it well. But there are some built-in capabilities that do machine learning. not that good in my opinion, but you can also create your own machine learning algorithms if you have a really extensive SOC. So based on those algorithms, you can do anomaly detection, which will also create alerts. So based on these alerts, we can do investigations. Those can be manual investigations through the portal or automated, for example, through Jupyter Notebooks. And of course, we do the response. The response can be automated using Azure Logic Apps. We'll discuss this in the future. And those Logic Apps, those automations can not only take actions on the incident, they can also take actions on the sources where the incident is being generated from. So that's already it for slides. Let's dive into the demo. We're going to be talking about a couple of things where we're going to be putting the focus on. One of them is creating the environment, creating the Sentinel workspace, enabling data connectors, enabling analytic rules, automations, and workbooks. So let's get started. I'm going into the Azure portal. And first of all, I'm going into Microsoft Sentinel. For me, it's right here inside of the recents, but if you look for Sentinel, you will find it as well. And here you can see I haven't created a Sentinel workspace just yet. So I will go to create. And here it's saying, hey, add Microsoft Sentinel to workspace. So this is what I meant earlier in the beginning. We build it on top of log analytics. So we add Sentinel on top of log analytics. So first of all, we need to create a log analytics workspace. You do this by clicking create new workspace. We will create a new resource group just for this demo. I will put it into West Europe because that's the closest data center I'm located to. I'll call it Sentinel demo, like that. We will create it, so that is the log analytics workspace we create. Important to know that the log analytics name we give right here. So for the workspace is also the name that Sentinel will receive. So it's important to think about that. So we'll click create. And we'll wait a second until that's created. Depends on how much fun Azure is having. Sometimes it goes really fast, other times it takes a little while to provision the workspace. So now we'll just need to wait and see how lucky we are today before it is being created. Normally it should pop up right here saying yes, created. Okay, great. So now we can add Sentinel to a workspace. So this is the workspace we just created, log analytics workspace. We'll click on that and we'll click add. So now this is just enabling Sentinel on top of that log analytics workspace. And I think it might be interesting to take a little step back. So, okay, this is a trial, great. We have 30 days trials. Important to know that it is only free for 10 gigabytes per day. So if you go beyond that, you will get a bill. That's an important one. Let's go back into the Sentinel because what I wanted to show you is if we go into the research group, you will see two records being created. We have a log analytics workspace and we have the solution on top of log analytics, which is the security insights, like I showed you. So if we would delete this, we would delete the Sentinel environment, and we cannot delete only the log analytics environment because the solution is enabled. So they're really heavily dependent on each other. So we'll click OK. OK. So this is the overview. Right now it's empty, so we don't see anything. Before we go into adding data connectors, like I said, and then adding analytic rules to create incidents, I want to go into the settings because I want to show you how the data retention works. So the data retention is a little bit hidden because it's not here. We can see there is pricing information. There are some settings available specific to Sentinel, but to set up the log analytics or the retention, we need to go into log analytics workspace. So we click on workspace settings right here. And then we will go into settings, usage and estimated cost. And here we can click on data retention. So right here, data retention is default 30 days. But like I said, for Sentinel, you get 90 days for free. So pushing it into this is a no-brainer. And then we click OK, and we have the data retention. So for here, this is one way to do data retention, the default way. We can push that to about 2 years, 730 days. But there are also multiple ways to retain data. That is something we can see in the tables. overview. So within this table overview, every table you have in Log Analytics or in Sentinel will be shown. Of course, I don't have a lot of tables enabled, so it's a little bit different. But for example, if you would look into things, security incidents might be a good one. We have security incidents right here. We can click Manage Table, and then we can configure what is the interactive retention. For example, let's say 1 year. And then what is the total retention period? If we set this to 3 years, for example, what will happen is we can see it here. We have an interactive retention of about 1 year, and then we have a archive period of about 2 years. So archive is like a cold storage, but you cannot actively query it, but you can restore it from a backup to query it. And of course, the interactive one, that's the default one, there you can query it. That is important to find a balance between how much do you want to retain it, because of course you pay for the retention and you also pay for restoring things from backup. So this is an important question to handle with your management as well, and to include legal, because there are some companies that have worked with before that have, for compliance reasons, some requirements on how long they have to retain the logs, because some customers of theirs require 2 years of log retention before you can even work with them. So it's important to double check that before you configure this all. So let's go back into the data connectors. And if we go into the data connectors, this is where we can add data connectors to ingest logs. Now, this is a little bit tricky. We can see, hey, we click on data connectors, but we don't have anything here. It's all empty. Why is that? Because we need to go into the content hub. So if you go into the content hub right here, we can click onto this, but you can also always go into the content hub right here. So the content hub is like all of the templates which are available, and by default, we haven't installed any templates. So you need to go into the content hub first to be able to install templates. It's a little bit tricky because previously we had templates right here, so we could just go to installed and regular. So it is an extra step, and it's important to know that we can filter it, which makes our life a little bit easier. So let's say we have the content type. We can go configure the filter. We can say data connector. So there's 360, about 360, 359 data connectors available out of the box, which you can enable. We can look into this, and here you can see we have all of the data connectors we want to look into and see which ones we would like to enable. As you can see, the content source is important. If we filter on that, we can see that there is a solution and a standalone. If you look into the standalone, okay, there are none, great. So there's all solutions. Solutions means it's a pack of things. So it's not just the data connectors, but it could be analytic rules, automations, etc. So you will install a solution, and you cannot pick which things you want to install from the solution. So if you only want the data connectors, you will also receive the analytic rules, for example. That's not that big of an issue because even though they are installed, they are not automatically enabled. So you can still choose when to enable them. So maybe to start off with, we'll look into Microsoft Enter ID, because that is a default one, natively supported by Microsoft. We can click on install, and now the data connector or the solution will install. As you can see, what is included here, we have 63 analytic rules, that's quite a bit, 1 data connectors, shall be back, 11 playbooks and 2 workbooks. So we'll start off with the data connector, and then we'll pivot into the analytic rule, playbook, and workbook later on. So we'll dive into data connectors at first. If I refresh, it should be here. We will have a data connector, and as you can see, it is not connected. We have 1 data connector available and none are connected. So we can open the data connector page, and right here we can see that we have all of the details, what you need to do to install it. So luckily for us, everything Microsoft related, or most of the things Microsoft Cloud related, are really, really easy to ingest into Sentinel. As an example here with Enter ID sign-in logs, we can just click sign-in logs, audit logs, non-interactive logs, click apply changes, and then we get all of those logs enabled. So it's already done out of the bat. So this is a really easy one on how you can ingest or enable a data connector within Sentinel. Now, of course, It's not all that easy, and it all depends on which type of product you want to enable. For example, if you're talking about an on-premises firewall, you might need a proxy agent to get the logs from the firewall and send them up into Sentinel. But every data connector will have a different way of enabling it. Some might be easy out of the box with a few clicks. Others might be API related. Others require an agent. It's all really different. So it's really important to go into every possibility by installing a solution from the content hub and seeing what the instructions are. For example, if we go into Palo Alto, I will select this, which are the firewalls, if I'm not mistaken. I will click install with dependencies. So right now, okay, we can see it is being installed. Apparently, I need to build another solution, which is built on top of this, or has a dependency on the common event format, the Ceph. So I assume that Ceph has some default things for all of the Ceph resources, and Palo Altos have a generic one. So is this installed? Let us check into the data connectors. Refresh. So I think I have the original ones. So the Ceph, but I don't have the Palo Alto just yet. So let me go back. Not sure what's happened here. Palo Alto Plano is installed with dependencies. Yes. This one is installed. Please let me install this one. Oh yeah, I clicked right here, but if you select multiple, you can click here to select multiple, but I messed up. So let us go into data connectors again. Here we should have the Palo Alto connector. Yes, all right. So we have a couple of deprecated ones. Great, Microsoft. Really loving the fact how the installation scenario is. This is a live demo, so bear with me. But for example, I will go into this one. So this one is deprecated, but it will show you the instructions. So for example, here we can see there's multiple steps. It's not like a click, click, click next, and we have the data into Sentinel. We need to create a AMA data connector, meaning this is a agent we install. And then we configure the Palo Alto to send the logs into the agent, and then the agent will send the logs into Sentinel. So these are a few extra steps, but it just goes to show you the differences between data connectors. For me, it's really important to say that, as you can see, the Content Hub is full of third parties. It's not only Microsoft. I think if we even go into the provider, we can check all of the third-party providers out there. If we select Microsoft, for example, now we have 670 solutions. Let's only select Microsoft just to see how much Microsoft has. Terrible at searching at the moment. Here we go. So we have 100 which are provided by Microsoft. So more than 500 are provided by third parties. And this is a really huge, of course, meaning there's lots of third party support in Microsoft and Microsoft Sentinel. And that's a misconception I often hear. It's saying, hey, Sentinel, it's only Microsoft products. No, it's certainly not that. There's so much possibilities out there. And also important that if you do not find the data connector right here, there are potential ways, not that hard actually, to ingest other logs to build your own data connector, essentially. So to ingest logs, which might not be listed here, directly into Sentinel. So if we go into the data connector tab right here, we will see that the Microsoft Entra ID one, it should be connected, it should be receiving data, but apparently it's not. Let me refresh. Okay, quickly double check the configuration. Yeah, it's all there, so it should be coming in. So we can validate this by going into the logs. And now, for example, the sign-logs table should be here. So this is all using KQL. I will make the assumption, and if everybody knows custom query language, KQL, but if you do not, it's a language specific to the Microsoft Cloud and also on-premises product even. So it's a new query language built by Microsoft. It's built into Sentinel, Defender, Configuration Manager, Application Insight. It's widely used across the Microsoft stack to query logs. And what we do is we have multiple tables. We can see the tables right here. We don't have a lot of tables because we haven't ingested much data. but we can call a table. So sign logs, the pipe symbolizes a new line. We'll take 10 and we'll take 10 lines right here. So as you can see, it's taking a little while before we have data. So we will revisit this in a little bit. Let's first move into analytic rules. So, excuse me, if we have the data enabled, we will have the tables right here, and we can build analytic rules. Analytic rules means that we will generate incidents. If you look into threat management right here, you will see at the moment with an incident we have none because we have not created any. So you need to manually dictate on what conditions incident can be created. And this is where it becomes time consuming, and you need to be aware of the effort you will put into doing this, because it will only work by putting effort into it to create incidents, but also to create good incidents. We'll come back into this a little bit later. So how do you create incidents? There's multiple ways, but the main way is to use analytic rules. So we can click right here, and here you will see all of the currently enabled analytic rules. Currently, we don't have any except one. I will come back to this later on. This one is a default one, but we will go into rule template. Here you can see we already have a few, because those are all coming from the solutions we have created. As you can see, this is the source name. So for example, this is the Entra ID solution we created. This is the Palo Alto solution we created. So by default, it's empty. So you again need to go into the content hub if you want any. You can filter on content type, analytic rule. I think there might be some standalone ones which are not in a solution. Let us check. Yeah, so for example, here we have a ton, which are analytic rules you can use to validate if that would be interesting to you. So I really recommend that you check those out, because there are some great templates out here, and it means you don't have to create it yourself. So we will go back into the analytic rules, and we will go back into the templates. So the templates are a great way to get started, because Keki will is tricky at first, and also just knowing what is a good incident, what isn't a good incident. It takes a while to get used to it, and I always recommend to just start off with the basics. Let's use the templates you have from Microsoft, and then move on from there if you're learning. Okay, so we will look into a few examples. Maybe a good example is, let's see, MFA. Okay, so this is a rule, MFA rejected by a user, which will identify if somebody has denied MFA. So this is a really interesting one to look into. So what we can do is we can, if you want to enable this, we'll click create rule. So this is the rule wizard. Right now it's all pre-filled in, and if we create a custom one, we can all fill this in. So this is all of the information that we have, the severity, the MITRE attack, techniques, tactics, and sub-tactics. The rule logic, so the main rule logic, of course, is the KQL that we can see right here. And we can see, oh damn, we're having a failure on the query right here. It cannot identify a table. This is a good example, because if we walk through it, we can see that it will fail to create. So let us try that. It's the identity info table. We'll go back a step forward, and you can see it doesn't want us to create it. It's throwing that right here. So we need to resolve the error. This is a little bit tricky. It's knowing what table is what, and there's no clear documentation that I have found to help you with that. I know that identity info is based on the UEBA configuration, and it's also mentioned in the description I told right here, to include UEBA logs. So what we can do is we can go into settings, again settings, and here we will see user UEBA right here. So what is UEBA? It essentially builds a profile for every user in the company, and it will add that data into Microsoft Sentinel. I think the easiest one is the reservable identity info, and that will log all of the information of the users. Who is it? What's the email address? What are the groups? What are the assigned roles? Who's the manager? Which will help you a lot during investigations. So we will apply this. So this means, okay, what do we choose? Which data do we want to synchronize? Enter ID or Active Directory. So Enter ID, that's just natively through Enter ID. Active Directory, that's through Defender for Identity. I don't have Defender for Identity installed on this tenant, so that's why I'm not selecting it, but there's no real reason not to select both of them. There's really no cost associated with this, so I do recommend this. So I think if we go back, just let the page refresh, we can see that it is enabled. Okay, unexpected error, great. Let's try that again, see if it worked. I don't know. Might be just because it's a new workspace in the past. Okay. Sounds good. And then I would like to enable. Yeah, it's taking a while. I don't know what's going on, but I think we have a temporary issue. So we'll move on to a different rule, just to prove the point. Maybe MFA spamming. Is this a good one? Yeah. So this will check if there is multiple MFA spamming, so multiple MFA prompts, followed by a successful login and a successful authentication. So this is a good one to check because it will check not only for one event, but it will connect multiple events between each other and then create incidents. And that's really important because, in my opinion, what I was going to show you as an example is the MFA rejected rule. In my opinion, it's not a very, very good rule because it's really noisy. If you go into your environment and try this rule, I would imagine you have lots of different MFA rejects because people are just struggling. They click on the button by accident. I think you all know it. And then you create the incidents and it seems all benign. And it's really important to create high trustworthy incidents because that's the only way you will be able to help your SOC investigate, because if they're used to always handling false positives, well, there's not much added value there. So let us go into the MFA spamming rule. We'll click create rule. So this is again the rule logic, and as you can see right here, it's a high compared to medium, and I like that because, for example, the previous one, the MFA deny, it was just one event. It's not really a data pattern, but here we see multiple events following, multiple denies, and then a successful, which in my opinion could warrant a high severity incident. We'll go into rule logic, and here we can see the KQL fully created. And one tip I can provide you if you're just starting out, learn to use and read the KQL that you see in the examples, because it will provide you with some ideas on how to do things and help you just to move forward. So I will not detail on this information right now because there's too much to handle. Maybe one important thing is it's important to add entities. So an entity is a way to add an account, an IP, or other types, for example, URL as a resource, a machine, to an incident. This is important for a couple of things. One, because then we can see easily, for example, for this user, how many incidents did we receive in the past, but Sentinel will also create a small profile based on the incidents, and it will help you investigate. And it will also be really important during the automations we do. So I do recommend that you try to add as many entities as possible, because it's easier to use them as context later on. Maybe one important thing is the query scheduling. So we can select how many times it runs every day. We could choose, for example, 1 hour or even 5 minutes. 5 minutes is, with this kind of rule, the least we can do. We cannot go any longer than that. What is important is that you always look into the query scheduling and you align it with the KQL, because, for example, as you can see right here in the KQL, it is looking for logs which are ingested in the last day. Previously, query scheduling was a last day. I want to see it in the last hour, so I'll update this to get the last hour. So here we go. So incident settings, it's also important because of the technique should be even create incidents. By default, we will create incidents. We can disable this, and the rule will still run. It will still create alerts, but it will not generate incidents. We can dive into this a little bit later, what this means and how we can do this. But right now it's important, if you want to investigate it, if you want the SOC team to actively work on this, that you always tick this box to make sure that, yes, incidents are being generated. The next step is automated response. This is something we'll dive a little bit deeper on in the next topic we're going to discuss to talk about automation. So we'll click create. And now we will see that we have two active rules, the MFA one and a default one. So this one will run every hour now. See if there's any hits based on the KQL, and then generate an incident right here for us. Now I promised I would look into the default rule, which is enabled right here. This is Fusion. Fusion is Microsoft Sentinel's machine learning capability, and it will detect incidents across a multitude of data connectors, and based on that, it will generate incidents. Now, I'm not a fan of it, to be honest, because we have seen it going wrong a lot. It's either too slow, or it doesn't work correctly as well. So at this time, at I think 4 years of working with Microsoft Sentinel, I have never had a good incidents coming out of Fusion. So that's why I'm saying don't depend on the machine learning from Sentinel. We always build our detections ourselves. So next step is automation, like I discussed. So analytic rules, so data connectors push data into Sentinel. Analytic rules will create incidents based on KQL, and based on the incidents, we can run automation. So there's a couple of things we need to look into: automation rules and playbooks. Let's start off with playbooks. Playbooks are a way to let me rephrase that. Playbooks can be compared to Power Automate, to Flow, but the Azure version. So playbooks are essentially logic apps. We can go into logic apps from the Azure portal right here. And those are logic apps are in the context of Sentinel are playbooks. So we have again some templates because Microsoft has created them for us using the Content Hub, but of course we can also create our own if you would want. It's easier to now use a template, so we will look into one thing and maybe let's look into the blocking of an Enter ID user. So I will create the playbook. Now it will run us through Wizard to help us with the creation. The most important part probably are the connections, and a connection is how it will authenticate into different services, Enter ID, Sentinel, and Outlook. So by using these connections, we can, for example, get data or take actions onto Enter ID and send emails. So we will create them, right? And now the templates will be deployed. So for a little bit. Okay, here we go. So this is an example of a logic app. As you can see, if you know Power Automate, you will know logic apps. One important thing to see is that we can see that some of the connections are failing. That's because we haven't authenticated to them yet. So what we can do is we can go into settings. No, not settings. We can go into, development tools, API connections. We can click on the API connections, click on edit API connections. We click authorize. It's a few different steps. It is quite a hassle to get them authenticated. And now it's asking for my FIDO key. Oh crap, do I have it with me? Let me see if this is the correct one. I have no idea, to be honest, otherwise this will be a little bit of a crap demo. Okay, we have that, so we will enable this. So this is an app registration being added into the tenant for logic apps and Enter ID. And now it should be authorized. Click save. So this is the first one. The second one is using a managed entity. So that is a way of Azure to authenticate without a secret. And it's all managed within the Azure backend. So that's a good thing. And then we have the Outlook one. We'll click authorize as well. And do the same right here. Okay, so we should be good to go. So if you go back into the Logic App Design right now, we can see, hey, great, everything is green. We don't have any errors just yet. I think the main easy thing about playbooks is that it's really easy to read. You don't need to learn code. It is quite easy to build for each loops, but also build conditions true, false, and you can follow it along really easily without building some strong comments, for example. So what does it will do? It will wait for an incident. Based on the incident, it will get the accounts. As you can see right here, the entities are important because it will get the entities of the incident and only act upon the accounts type within the incident. So if you don't correctly add the entities into the incident, the automation will not have anything to take action on. It will update the end user. So what it will do, it will disable the account with an enter ID, and then it will also check a condition and see has it, oh crap. Okay, I clicked out of it, no problem. We can go into active playbooks. There should be one about block enter ID user. So we'll go back into this one. There we go. And then we are back at it again. So if it will fail, it will send in a comment, hey, I failed. I wasn't able to do this. Or it will say, hey, it's successful. It will try to get a manager. If it has a manager, it will send an email to the manager saying, hey, your account has been disabled. Please watch out and see that you can get them going again. If there's no manager, we will just add a comment into Sentinel to notify the security team. So this is an easy example on how playbooks work. You can go really ham with those. Within the collective, we built quite a few extensive ones. It really depends on what you want to do and what use cases you have. One important note is that some of the API connections you might have seen is, for example, the Azure AD one. If we click into Edit API connections, they are now tied into my account because you can see I have logged in into those API connections. I'm not a fan of that because then my admin account is linked to some production workloads. You should always use some kind of application authentication. I also don't recommend service accounts because those can go wrong. So I always recommend to use an app registration or a managed entity. The details on that is out of scope of this talk because it will take too much time. But it's you need to really look into how to use managed entities in app registrations if you want to get going within Logic Apps, because by default, Microsoft kind of pushes you into service accounts, but those should be avoided just because of issues with MFA and token lifetime. So always try to use app registrations. You will make your life a little bit harder because it is not native, but it will be much more secure. So right now we built the playbook, but it's not doing anything yet. It's waiting for us to start it. So what we can do is to get it started, we need to create an automation rule. So we can create a new automation rule, and an automation rule is a really easy way, for example, test block user, to trigger certain automations. So what it can do is have multiple triggers when an incident is created, updated, or when an alert is created. We'll select when an alert is created. Then we have multiple conditions. For example, here the analytic rule template. We can choose the MFA spamming rule we just built, but you can go into a lot of details on what conditions you want based on the status and the details of the incident, but also on the entities. For example, if this user is in the incident and on this device with this process running, please take this action. So you can go really granular with this. So based on the condition, we run actions. We can do simple actions like changing the status, closing it, for example, the incident, change the severity, assign it to someone, add tags or tasks. But we can also run a playbook. So these are easy things you can do without much effort. But if you want to do more extensive, more advanced tasks, you need to go into run a playbook. So then we select the playbook we just created. Okay, and right here, it's again showing me an error, meaning, hey, you will only see playbooks if the incident trigger is configured. We did that. And if Sentinel has permissions to run it. That is something we have not done. So we will go into manage playbooks. And here we need to select the research group that we have created and where our logic apps are in, because that will assign the role to Sentinel to trigger the logic apps. So this is the research group where we created our logic app. We will grant those permissions, and hopefully here we can see block enter ID user. So what this will do is this will, when every time an incident is created by the specific rule, it will run this playbook, meaning it will block a user and send an email to the manager if he has any. We'll click apply. And there we go. So it's really easy to do that automation. You can add multiple ones, and based on the order it will run. Again, we can go really advanced with this, but let's start off with the examples and work from there. And the last thing I want to show you, which is one of the easy things as well to show, is the workbooks. Again, we will have templates. For example, we'll go into some of the Microsoft ones. So a workbook is a way to visualize some of the data within Microsoft Sentinel. So you can see right here, I have some basic information on the amount of sign-ins I have in a tenant. I only have one user, so it is not that extensive, and it will not provide you a clear picture. But if you enable this in a protection tenant and let Sentinel collect data for some time, you will have an awesome picture on what the activity is. Sentinel is a great way to visualize data and to get insights. And it can be easy for management or for example, your manager, your direct manager, to get some insight into what you're doing. Because KQL is not for everybody, but by using workbooks, you can visualize it and really easy get some important insights. And as I just showed you by accident, it can also be interactive. So for example, I can select this time frame in the graph, and then everything below the graph will be updated based on the input I provided. Within the background, this is just KQL. So every visualization is a KQL query. So it takes, again, some time to get used to it. But if you use the templates, you will get far and get going. So we discussed a ton, and I'm already at the 55-minute mark. I just want to show you and provide you some examples on Sentinel architectures. Sentinel will never be the only thing that will be deployed in an environment. It will always connect with other resources in your tenant. So here we can see this is a single tenant architecture. We will have Microsoft Sentinel centrally. We have all of the different data connectors right here, pushing data into Sentinel. Then we have a couple of things. We have the analyst here working on the incident. He will use automation to trigger automation, both in Sentinel and in the data sources. But he can also do the investigation, both in the portal and automation. And last but not least, he has an integration into ServiceNow, the ITSM tool. So what you can do is, if you have a current ITSM tool, there are integrations available between Sentinel and ServiceNow, for example, to have a bidirectional sync. If an incident is being created, it will be created into ServiceNow and vice versa. The easy thing is, if you're already using ServiceNow as a company, it's easy to integrate it and to have one single pane of glass for all of your incidents. So this is single tenant, this is multi-tenant. So this is the case where you're an MSSP, like for example, we at the collective, we have multiple customers right here. Each customer has their own Sentinel environment. That Sentinel environment is accessible for us using Azure Lighthouse. So it is all in the same window, and then it's all connected into Sentinel resources, for example, the ITSM tool of the MSSP, where the analyst can also use automation. So this is just an example of how you can scale it. You can have easily manage multiple instances of Sentinel using Lighthouse, and you can use the same automation across your customers, but you can also have specific automation for your customers. You can really choose what you do here. So before I stop the presentation, I want to provide you with some key takeaways. The first one is the built-in data connectors. Why is that? Because they're really strong and really easy to implement. And I have not mentioned this, but they're also really cheap. So Microsoft does provide some discounts based on the data connector you use. And if you use some of the built-in connectors, you can get them really cheap and it will cost you almost nothing. So that's interesting to get started because you can learn your environment, learn Sentinel, learn KQL while having a low cost. Then community is really important. There is a big community in Microsoft Sentinel. There's a GitHub page. You have all of those templates and you have people throwing things on Twitter and LinkedIn, etc. Use that. It can be a big step to get into Sentinel, but if you are using the community, you can use their knowledge and expand your own. And thirdly, third parties are out there and are omnipresent within Sentinel. It's not only Microsoft, it's also third parties. So be sure to be on the lookout on every third-party product you want to use and integrate into the scene. And last but not least, use automation. Use heavily automation. Because a SOC analyst can get tired of doing all the investigations. Because if you build automation to do the heavy lifting, you will help them, and it will also be quicker, for example, to take actions like blocking the user, like we did. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. It was meant to provide you a quick show around on Sentinel. We didn't deep dive into anything, but it does provide you an overview of what is possible and what you can do. I think the next step for you is just go into the portal, go into the Azure portal, activate a 30-day trial, start playing around with it, focus on the Microsoft tools, use the community out there, and get and see what you can do securing your environment. Thank you for tuning in, and hope to see you next time.